Hello, and welcome to the H in HR podcast, where people discuss the most important aspect of human resources, the human aspect. Now, here is your host, Ricky Baez.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the H in HR podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Baez, and thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Broadcasting from beautiful Central Florida, which I don't know if it's good outside. I don't know if it's raining or if it's sunny. I got my blinds shut. I just like working in the dark today. So, but either way, just imagine it's beautiful. It doesn't really matter, right? It's Orlando. I mean, how bad could it possibly get? But folks, I just finished recording a session with a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Eisler. Let me tell you about Jonathan. I first met him. He was a speaker at Disrupt HR Jacksonville 2.0 earlier this year. Stay tuned because there's plans in place for Disrupt HR Jacksonville 3.0 for next year. But yeah, so he was a speaker at the event this year, and he was talking about, you know how organizations have employee assistance programs for the employees? And he was talking about that you got to have something similar for the organization itself, right? And that really resonated with me, right? Because one of the things that I like to do, of course, with my daily course of work is I like talking about EAP, because EAP, in my opinion, over the years, or in case you don't know what that means, is the Employee Assistance Program. Over the years, has got a bad rap. It really has. And one of the things that I really want to do is I want to put EAP in the forefront to where people fully understand all the benefits that you get from it. Now, that's from an employee perspective. What he was talking about is from a complete leadership perspective. So let me tell you what he does for a living. He is the vice president of All One Consulting. And what he does for the organization, he cultivates high impact teams, and he makes sure that any kind of success they have is results driven. So, I mean, I don't know any better way to explain somebody's skill set than something like that. In the show, you'll hear, I mean, I told him you should put that like on a t-shirt, right? Because that's just an impactful statement. So anyway, we had a great conversation about EAP, the importance of it, and the importance of making sure that your employees have a good relationship with leadership and vice versa. So the show is all about cultivating those relationships and focusing on the results that you get out of those relationships. So, folks, without further ado, check it out. You're going to like it. This is Jonathan Eisler. Check it out. My main man, Jonathan. How you doing today, man?
Doing well. Excited to have this conversation with you.
Excellent. Well, look, I appreciate your time, and I've been waiting for us to record because I first met you at Disrupt HR Jacksonville earlier this year, man, and you knocked it out of the park. I mean, you really did. You want to tell the audience real quick, what was it? What was the topic you chose for your 5 minutes of fame with Disrupt HR Jacksonville?
Yeah, that was quite a fun experience too. And full transparency, authenticity here was a little bit daunting, just to be able to have something that was so structured, 20 slides, 5 minutes, but it was a good exercise. You did a great job emceeing it, and shout out to the entire Disrupt HR Jax team. But the topic was on organizational health is the new employee wellness. And I chose that because the organization that I have the privilege of being a part of, All One Health, really takes that comprehensive or a whole systems approach to look at whole health at the organizational level, whether it's through organizational consulting, like the division that I run, through our wellness division, or through our robust employee assistance program that provides unlimited access to mental health resources for employees and their family, in addition to a bunch of other concierge services. Our organization really looks at the entire health of an organization by looking at the entire health and well-being of individuals. It's something I'm passionate about, and that's why it was an easy topic for me to decide on once I found out I was going to have the opportunity to speak at Disrupt HR.
Well, it definitely caught my attention because it's one of the things that I like to push on my clients and everybody who I talk to about HR is, just employee health, mental health, and more importantly, the employee assistance program. Because Jonathan, I don't know if you've gotten this pushback, the same pushback as I have in my career, is people tend not to like EAP. People tend not to use EAP because of the stigma behind it. And I'll say it, a lot of people have a the wrong opinion or the wrong perception of EAP, that is only if you're going crazy, quote unquote, right? And that's not the
Yeah,
case. There's a lot more to it, right?
absolutely. And I mean, let's be honest, that stigma you're talking about, that also applies to mental health in general, but it's even magnified within EAP because, like, think about our parents' generation, right? If there was an EAP or what would be called an EAP then, um, even not that long ago, it was probably some gentleman, let's call him Bob, at the end of the hall that if you showed up too many Mondays late, reeking of alcohol and your eyes were red, they're like, go talk to Bob, right? It's like where you went when something was wrong. It's being sent to the principal's office for professionals. So it wasn't seen in a positive light. But that's something I will say this too. One of the positives that came out of the pandemic, it has further destigmatized the need for mental health resources. Um, but that's also why an organization like All One Health, we're just really passionate about continuing to chip away at that stigma and really position these resources as a proactive measure. And it's exciting for us when we look at the data that where employees are coming into the program, when they are finding out about it from their colleagues, that just speaks a testament to the
Yep.
positive experience that they're having and to start to shift that, right? It can come from HR or CEOs or COs, senior leadership. It doesn't necessarily matter. But when a colleague's like, hey, Ricky, it's not just when things are going bad. It's like, look, I was a little stressed about this new home I bought. It's a little financial uncertainty right now. And then Ricky goes, you know what? Hey, you should just reach out to the EAP. They can help you out. It's no cost to us. And it helped me get through here. Like that's a positive way, right? So it's reassuring to be able to see that and that the stigma is continuing to be chipped away at. I'll say that.
And interesting that you say that piece because the example you use is not an example that people are used to, right? Because you said I'm
Right?
stressed out because I'm buying a home. And some
Yeah.
if you've never bought a home before, let me tell you, it's not all roses. It is stressing. It really is because if you're putting some money down, you got to move some money here. You got to, coordinate the moving. You become a project manager, even though that's not what you do for work. So it
Yeah.
really is stressful. So, Jonathan, what do you tell people who are afraid to calling EAP, who are afraid to reaching out because they're just concerned about their boss finding out the reason they call EAP? Because that's the pushback I've gotten.
That part's the I don't mean to diminish this, but that
Okay.
part is somewhat of the easier, right? Because of an easier answer is about the bosses finding out because of fear of confidentiality. Mental health professionals are legally bound by the laws of HIPAA,
Mm.
right? They can literally lose, they will lose, and I'm not a clinician, so I just want to put that out there too. But they will lose their licensure to be able to practice if they violate the laws that HIPAA at the national level
Yeah.
protects, right? It's the privacy of personal and health related, and mental health is a part of that information. So that will end. Believe me, EAP providers are held to the highest levels of standards around this, even to the extent that, say, Zoom or Teams, because right, we do a lot of video counseling in today's environment, text, all this other stuff. It is so restrictive in a good way for an EAP provider that's using Zoom. There's little simple things like it's impossible to copy and paste text out of a chat. You cannot share files through there. And
Oh,
it's called a HIPAA compliant Zoom,
okay.
right? So there's a ton of different ways there that will help to protect the employee's confidentiality. Um, but still it's that repositioning. And I will say this does start at the top within organizations, that it's not just where you go when things are bad. It's where you go for help in the broadest sense, right? One of the greatest stories that I heard talking to a customer is actually an HR leader. She shared about how she was getting stressed out for an upcoming wedding a few years ago, and she couldn't find a makeup artist. She called the EAP, and within like a couple hours, they had a makeup artist set up on site for a
No.
destination wedding for the wedding. Right? People don't think about
Wow.
that type of
I
stuff.
didn't know that.
Another story I heard. Now I should also be clear. I don't want to sound like I'm pushing stuff, but there's a wide range of EAPs, right? So
Yeah.
this isn't a blanket statement, all EAPs, but when there's a standalone employee assistance provider that doesn't have fiduciary ties to an insurance carrier, that's when you start to get this level of concierge services that I'm talking about.
Oh, I got it.
Another great example I heard not too long ago was a family was getting ready to go on this vacation. They'd been planning for almost a year, and they had flooding in their basement. And they called the EAP, said, here's our homeowner's insurance. And the EAP said, we'll take care of it. Got a group out, got the water out, did the mold treatment, filed the insurance claim. By the time the family came back, they had a check in the mail from their insurance company. little things like that, right?
So
Shift that it's not just where you go when things are wrong.
I'm shocked right now. Now I knew EAP was a lot more than what people think it is, but those are great specific examples of what people just didn't know what kind of assistance you could find, and it's free, right? Because it's
To the
in most
employees, yeah,
cases,
and
yeah.
it costs less than a cup of coffee to the employers, and that part just kind of blows your mind,
Wow,
right?
look at
Yeah,
that.
no cost to the employees.
So okay, so no, so I'm definitely going to market the living daylight side of this piece because yes, that EAP piece is important. There's a lot more in there's a lot more benefit out there than what people think it is. So this is what you do, right? So, but I'm looking at your bio. I'm looking at your bio, and it says you have a proven record in refining goals and cultivating high impact teams, and you're also the essential, so you're also an essential architect of results driven success. Man, I got to put that on a t-shirt. All right. I got to put that because that sounds really dang good. All right. So, what does
So,
that mean, Jonathan?
so this is probably where I should clarify. I am not in the EAP side of our business, right? I have the opportunity to lead our organizational consulting division because I mentioned whole health, right? We talk about the whole health of an organization. So all that stuff I just talked about with the EAP, that is so important at the individual level for employees and for their family members. Because I don't know about you, but I think the notion that we can separate work and life is BS, right? Because what happens at our home, like okay, let's say you have a blow up with your partner or something like that. You come to work, even if it's just going into your home office and closing the door, it's going to impact how you're at work,
Yep.
right? And also conversely, you have a terrible day at work or a great day at work, it's going to impact how you come home to your family and how you show up. So that's on the EAP side. But looking at the whole health approach, the whole system, maybe to use a medical term, our consulting division then focuses on the experience that employees have with their employer directly, right? So it's like, do employees really enjoy the manager that they report to? Do they feel that they're included in the team? Do they feel supported by the team that they're a part of? Right? Do they feel that the organization cares about them, wants to provide them opportunities to grow? All of those types of things. And let's be honest, work is where we spend the majority of our waking hours anyway,
Yeah.
right? And so that's what I get really excited about, that I get to focus on that organizational piece. And then my colleague that focuses on the wellness piece. So we have the physical through the wellness, we have the mental health through the EAP, and then we have the experience with the employing organization in the consulting division. That's the side that I run.
So you guys have the whole package then, right? Because here's what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong. What I heard is that you personally or professionally, but you work with how the employees deal with the employers and vice versa, right? To cultivate that relationship, to make sure that relationship works. And then a colleague in your same organization focuses on the employee's well-being, just the employee, not necessarily their boss, right? But
Yeah.
what baggage, if any, they bring in from home or they take home from work. Because I agree with you, Jonathan. It's people spend most of their waking hours at work, and one of the things that I do teach to my students, because I teach over at Rollins College here in Winter Park. Are you in Orlando? No,
I'm in
you're in
St.
Gentleman,
Augustine.
St. Augustine. Man, I love
Yeah.
it there. I'm going there this come no in 2 weekends. I'm gonna be there once the Christmas stuff. Is the Christmas stuff still up already?
The lights go up the 18th this Saturday.
Oh, see, so folks, if you saw, it almost looked like you had a calendar, like a date on your computer. You're like, oh, it's here's when it's coming. You're waiting for that, aren't you?
One of the nonprofits I have the opportunity to serve on the board for, that's our largest fundraiser of the
Ah,
year. It's the Home Again St. John's. We take a personalized approach to help the home disadvantaged within the city of St. Augustine to get back on their feet and have access to some of the basic human rights. And that's our biggest fundraiser. So that's also top of mind right now.
got it. So that's why it was like really, really quick. And folks,
Yeah.
if you're listening, you don't know about the city of St. Augustine. It is the nation's oldest city, the first one, right? The nation's oldest. What was it?
52.
1552. Just a few years ago, right? Yeah, that's it. No, but dude, yeah. So one of the things
Your
that I
students, you think?
yeah, so one of the things that I talk to my students about is how you as a leader affect the entire day of your employee, right? Because if you divide your day by three, right? That's three equal parts of 8 hours. You're at work for at least eight, right? Let's say 10, right? You're at work for 10 hours, right? And then when you go home and other people think, oh, that's it. So they're going home and they're going to relax. No, you got kids, you got karate, you got soccer, you may have another job, you may have to do Uber Eats, you may have to do these other things. There's other responsibilities that do not care where you just came from your first part of the day. And then you do that for at least eight. What's that, 18 hours so far? We got 6 hours left, right?
Yeah.
And what suffers is sleep. And the more stressful people are at work, the worse the relationships are at home, and the worse you sleep, and then it gets worse and worse. But if as a leader, you're able to affect the employee's day in a positive way for at least those 10 hours. Those 10 hours are going to lead to better relationships at home. You're going to sleep better at night. And then it's a big vicious circle. Now, I don't want people to think I'm a psychiatrist. I am not. But I did sleep at a Holiday Inn a couple of weeks ago. But I'm not a psychiatrist. But but here's the thing. I that has worked for me. That I have seen it that way. Have you seen anything different, or does that rationale work for you?
It works 100%. And for those of you that haven't yet seen the recordings of the Disrupt HR, watch it. And exactly what you just said, Ricky, and I say watch all 10 presenters, all phenomenal. At the end of my 5 minutes, that's exactly what I talked about. This is sort of like my personal mission in life, because I believe that happy and healthy organizations create and lead to happy and healthy leaders that lead to happy and healthy employees. And happy and healthy employees, they get out of work, they go back into the community, and they're happier and healthier partners. They're happier and healthier parents. Which leads to happier and healthier children, and ultimately a brighter future for all of us, right? So call it grandiose, I don't care. I say dream big, shoot for the stars. But that is what I truly believe. And that's why actually I initially got into industrial organizational psychology almost 20 years ago, because I saw the ability at the organizational level to have the impact on the individual today, the community tomorrow, and the future. So that's, you and I are on the same page, Ricky. No surprise.
So we are, trust me. And I saw on your LinkedIn, you dabbled in HR. You was an HR generalist back in the day, right? So what got you into HR?
So it was actually my exposure when I first went to grad school for industrial organizational psychology. I wanted to really understand how HR focuses on driving the success of an organization by focusing on the human aspect of the business, right? The H in HR.
There you go.
And that's what really drew me in there. I really loved it. Just personally, I think it was more the role that I was in, also maybe where I was at in my career. But I also then wanted, like, I was sort of stuck in a box. I'll just say that, right? And I saw that too often HR, and I know, and I should be careful, I'm walking on thin ice here, thinking about the audience here.
You're good.
Too often
You're
HR can get sort of like pushed down and seen as almost like, oh, they're a cost center. And sometimes, admittedly, some of the HR folks that I worked with and that I've seen, they'll even do this to themselves. But it's at the organizational level. There was an old comic I saw back in the days when they were printed in the newspaper, and it was like there was an executive board meeting around a big table, and HR was in a lower chair in the corner, and HR was like, "We want to be important, right?" And it's terrible.
Yep.
But that comes from the top. And so I saw an opportunity, if we can help business owners, the business leaders start to shift that thinking. And I will say, it's come a long way. That was 20 years ago. It's come a long way to where we are now. But as I see HR leaders that truly understand the core drivers of their organization, what leads to the success, and they see how critical their role is, their table or their chair is not just at that table, but going back to that comic I saw before, that chair starts to rise up, right? I love working with leadership teams that say, that's great. Let's talk to our CHRO. What do they think about this? Let's get their input. And so I get very excited when I start to see that too. But we have to take ownership for ourselves as HR leaders, as business leaders, as consultants, so.
And
that's
folks,
a long answer.
No. That's I love that answer, actually. So for everybody out there listening, that's a little bit confusing what he said. A newspaper is a sheet of thin paper where the news was printed on, and we used to get all of our social media information from there. That doesn't exist anymore because you said
Oh,
newspaper, and I'm like, oh, dude,
yeah.
we lost people, brother. We lost people. So, no, but you know what though? You're 100% right because it's when it comes to, let's say, as far as value, right? And don't worry about saying that on this show because I like to keep this authentic here. So yes, HR HR is seen as an expense, right? To
Yeah.
the untrained eye, HR is seen as an expense. So if we came to a point where we now had to lay people off, the first place that people look at is the departments that don't generate immediate value, right? So things that are not
Yep.
sales, right? So HR, training and development, things like that. But that's to the naked eye. But to the trained eye, they're able to see that HR may not generate immediate sales, but HR generates value because with how HR consults with the operations and how to with sales, with talent, if we do things the right way and we have the right harmony of relationships and we have the right harmony of expertise, the value that person brings to the organization is just that much more higher because of that relationship. So that's the biggest difference because you said that if you're at the table, you got people who would ask the CHRO. Here's when I know that the business gets the value of human resources. You ready? When we're having a meeting, right? And then the leader says, oh, God, you know what? Let's run this by HR to make sure we don't get in trouble, right? That's one way. The other way is, you know what? Let's run it by HR. Let's see what they have to say. Maybe they're able to catch something we can't, right? Those two different conversations are different. I don't know what just happened. For those of you who can't see the video, I put the peace sign and balloons came up. I need to work on that. It's going to come out in the video. Can you do it?
No, it
No, no.
doesn't come up
Oh,
on my
dude, that was so
side.
cool. Oh my God. My 8-year-old sense of humor came out. Sorry.
That's great.
So let me ask you this, John, because it's someone who does what you do. I'm really curious on how you handle leaders who say, you know what, I don't believe in that hokey pokey stuff. That's fluffy stuff. People should just be happy to have a job. Can you just make them work and then go home and we don't have to do all this fluffy stuff? It's what do you say to leaders who push back in that manner?
So I'll say my initial response, and then I'll say what I actually say. I should say my initial reaction. My initial reaction is I'm not going to waste my time having a conversation with them because you and I both know this. That business is going to be obsolete in 3 to 5 years. They're not going to
Yep.
be able to attract, and they damn sure ain't going to be able to retain good talent. Right. So I'm not going to waste my time trying to convince them of that. Now, that's when it's the very top, the CEO, business owner, something like that. But if at the very top there still is that understanding that the very success of the business is due or tied to the way that their employees experience the business and therefore their managers, right? An employee, they say employees lead managers, not companies, right?
Yep.
Because that is how an employee experiences an organization, is by their direct supervisor. So that, and we do run into that at varying levels of leadership, right? Where there's that kind of pushback. And that's when you can have a conversation to start to say, like, I mean, I guarantee all of us and all of your listeners have walked in, whether it's a coffee shop or retail store, a movie theater, doesn't matter. You can walk in, and in your first few seconds of interacting with an employee, whether it's a front desk person, a cashier, or salesperson, whatever it may be, you can very quickly pick up on how they feel about the organization
Yep.
they work with,
That's right.
right? It's the difference of saying, nope, that's not our policy, sorry, to say, let's see what we can do
Yep.
here, right? And so you can start to make that connection there, that how your employees feel about you, manager that thinks that's all fluffy, is directly how which are therefore their customers, are going to feel about your organization, right? Do you want your customers feeling like it doesn't matter, they're just replaceable, they're all a number?
No, absolutely not. I
There you
I
go.
would
Well, then
not
it
my
starts at your
customer to feel that
employees.
way. Yeah.
Then it starts at your employees.
And you know where I see that difference. And no, Chick-fil-A is not sponsoring this, but I got to tell you, Chick-fil-A and McDonald's, they're both in the fast food industry. But
Yeah,
if you shut down all the marketing, if you take out all the billboards and you just went into two separate restaurants next to each other, one is Chick-fil-A, one is McDonald's, but you don't know which is which, you'll know by how they treat you where you are. Right, you'll know
100%.
exactly where they are. And I shared this before, but this is my favorite story. A few years ago, pre-pandemic, I was there's a Chick-fil-A right down the street from my house. I live in Orlando, and I'm just in there working, because I love their breakfast. The breakfast is on point. So I have my Coke Zero with my minis. So, but I'm reading my news from a tablet, not a newspaper. Just making sure people know what's up. So I'm reading my news from my tablet, and my Coke Zero is almost gone. And this lady who was sweeping up just came up to me. Hey, what are you having, hun? Just keep the top. I'll fill this up for you. And it 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 didn't shock me, but I paused for a second because I'm like, somebody's
Mhm.
refilling my drink while I'm sitting down, and I'm not at a fast casual restaurant, right? I'm at a fast food restaurant. And by the way, the person who was sweeping, who stopped by my table to ask me if I wanted a refill, that was the manager, right? That was the
Again,
manager.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that right there, and but then you know what happens though, Jonathan, because you do have some leaders who will say, that's fine, we're not Chick-fil-A. But I agree with you. If you as a leader don't believe that the people who are the most closest to the reason you're in business, your employees, if you don't believe that they deserve um and I don't want to say an area, but if they deserve their spot to be themselves at work, so that way they can bring the talents that you hired them to do. And if you don't believe that they deserve an area where they can fulfill whatever talents they have, then yeah, we shouldn't be working with them, right? So I'm with you. I'm
Yeah.
with you. So
And in today's job market, right, we know that's one of the, I mean, that's what keeps business leaders up at night is, and I don't necessarily like the term, but let's say the shortage of talent, right? So it's so critical. And HR plays such a critical role in this.
oh man, let me tell you, and look, again, HR has a really bad stigma, and I'm not gonna lie, it's we've earned it. We've earned it. We definitely have done things in the past that would earn us that black eye out there. Because look, back in the day when HR was personnel, all we did was push paper, and all we did whenever operations had an idea and they brought it to us, we were so hell bent on trying to find a way how that's not going to work. And I don't understand why we had that rationale instead of saying, I got you, right? Because I want people to come to me to say, hey, Ricky, how can you help me do this? Instead of saying, I got to check a box. Right. And the
Yeah.
best way I can describe what a human resources department, I know I'm stuck on that. I'm sorry, Jonathan. How a human resources department works is if your business partner wants to go from Orlando to Miami, right? Your business partner wants to be in a Corvette and go 120 miles an hour, right? My job as HR is I'm the state trooper. Look at that. Now I'm doing thumbs up and that's coming up. My job is I'm a state trooper. So I want you to get to Miami, but you have to follow the rules, you have to follow the laws, and you got to do it under 70 miles an hour. Now, if I'm a real partner, I'm going to go out and find different ways for you to get there faster, not just I-95, not just the turnpike. I'm going to help you get there faster from a perspective you haven't seen before. So when you're out there working with these businesses, how much time do you work with the CEO of a business versus working with the head of HR?
So I'm going to answer that question at a little bit of a higher level because I
Okay.
think it applies to whether we're working with a frontline team or a head of HR and a CEO, right? It We always have to focus on the top first. So early on in my career, I walked into some situations where working with the group and like nobody would get engaged, right? You always have to get the mindset shift first before you can start moving into the learning, right? You know this.
Mhm.
And finally I was like, guys, what's going on? And they're like, the reason that we're all here isn't in the room. And it just hit me, right? If I could go back to 20 years younger Jonathan, and since then, I've walked away. We have walked away. My division has walked away. My team has walked away from opportunities where that next level is not willing to be a part of the conversation. because then we're just being seen as a tool to come in and fix something, let's say. And so I would say the same thing with HR, right? So I had a conversation within the last 2 weeks with an HR leader, had some great aspirational goals that I could 300% get behind around shifting the culture there. She was brought in initially as a consultant, then brought in internally to create more of an equitable and inclusive culture, right? And so, and to her credit, she also said, well, we got to start with the leadership team. Okay, we're going through the list of everyone, and said, okay, so I just asked the question. I said, so how do they feel about this coming initiative? And the reaction was, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It has to happen. Well, I'm not going to say that she's not wrong. Or I'm saying, well, I'm not going to say that she's not right. Yeah. I'm going to say I would walk into a landmine or a firing squad to that then the next step, we're not walking away, but the next step is we need to have some conversations with your CEO first. Let's have some talk there, right? Because and you and I both know this as external consultants, we're not always saying something new. We're just an objective outside third party, oftentimes saying the same damn thing that the internal leaders were saying. But that's one of the values in bringing in an outside party, right? So that if we can sit there and say, look, we're working with hundreds of organizations like yours in the last couple of years, this CEO, I understand your hesitation to get into something like this, and this is fluffy to you, but let's talk about what happens if you don't. And let's talk about some examples, some real world examples. Let's also talk about some organizations very similar to yours and what they saw when they decided to take this uncomfortable plunge, have some difficult conversations, be vulnerable, and then hold each other accountable, right? So it's got to start there.
Yeah. It's Jonathan, we could be here all day saying that. No, because you're right. It has to start at the top. And look, as a business owner, as business leaders, and we have to be really careful, right? Because if we accept, especially for me, I'm speaking for me as a consultant, especially for me, if I take on a project that way, that a leader just doesn't want to be flexible. They just say, hey, just go fix the employees and give you the bill later. So that's the type of client that you don't want. I don't want to work with, if that's the case, right? Because what's going to end up happening is we'll go in, everybody will have fun, they'll go back to work, and then the leader is not on board because the CEO is not on board, and whatever we learned in that class, it's just not going to materialize. And then when the CEO's having golf with his buddies, hey, how did Ricky do? It didn't work out at all, right? And then it's all my fault, right? So
100%, yeah, well said.
So Jonathan, that said, what are 3 things you think, or no, not you think, what are 3 things that from your perspective, leaders need to do to start working on getting that high impact team, for building those really good relationships with their employees?
So 3 things. Let's think about this in layers. I think it really starts with leading by example. And that's a very broad statement, but what I mean by this is being very, very clear on expectations they have of themselves, right? And also leading by example in that it's okay to be vulnerable, right? It's okay to be vulnerable because, again, it ties to my personal values, and I communicate this with my teams too, is it starts with well-being. We got to take care of ourselves so we can be the best us to our families, whatever we want to define family, right? Blood or other. Then got to take care of our family, because then, as we said earlier, that impacts our professional life, and then focus on our professional life, right? So we have to lead by example with that. And it's okay to say, hey, I'm having a tough day. I'm a bit stressed out. I need to take half a day for my own mental health. If you need me, I'll be back tomorrow, right? And also leading by example on truly unplugging. If you say that you're unplugging to go take care of yourself, do it. Don't respond to the emails. It takes extra work up front. I'm getting ready to go on medical leave on Monday for a few weeks for a procedure. It takes a lot more work this week, but you better believe that I need to be able to create the space for my body to heal itself. And I need my team to know that I want them to take the same approach. And I'm going to give them the same respect, but it starts with me, right? So don't feed into that, well, I'm the leader, I got to do this, but I want my team to do that separately. That's BS. So that's the first, lead by example in a lot of different ways. And then you cascade that down though too, right? Creating that space and being very clear for your team what your expectations are. I think a lot of the time in business, we start focusing on, well, yeah, they know what the KPIs are for the month, the quarter, the fiscal year. That's not just what I'm talking about. Sure, that's a piece of it. but it's the things that we've been talking about for the last 30 minutes that lead up to it. The things like the personal care, your own well-being, your own mental health, those types of things. And lastly, it's understanding each of your employees different as a leader, right? Gone are the days of, well, I'm the boss, do what I say. It doesn't work that way anymore. And even just from an effort reward kind of balance, of course, we want to make sure that that's equitable, right? Do our employees feel that they are being rewarded equitably for the effort that they're putting in? But don't just stop there. What's different to me? Probably very different to you, Ricky.
That's right.
And
That's
and
right.
you know, and we go around the room. I have a team of 6, and I know that it's through conversations, taking the time to get to know them, to have conversations. I'm also a big fan of assessments. I'll just put that out there. But understanding, we just recently went through Pat Lencioni's 6 types of working teams.
Oh my
right?
God, my favorite author.
Each one of
Yep.
Same.
My favorite author.
Each of our teams went through the assessments. We actually rewrote our job descriptions based off of what tasks we do that make us feel like geniuses. And we're really, really clear on what each person does. And it's also okay to know what we're not great at too, right? And once you have that transparency, I'm able to say like, hey, that's your genius of wonder and invention coming up. Well, I don't have the genius of tenacity, but Monique does. Right. And so you got to know each of your people appropriately and accordingly, adapt your communication style, your leadership style, your support, and your reinforcement for the individual, not for the collective.
So, folks, look, if we could be here for days talking about this, because I agreed 1,000% with everything Jonathan just said. Because look, at the end of the day, Jonathan, you know this, it's all about the employee. It's all about the human aspect, and it's all about what this podcast is all about. It's all about the H in HR. And I am glad, I am proud and happy that there's somebody out there, or people out there like you and me, who really care about the employee. Because again, the business would not be there if it wasn't for the employee with the talents that they have that you don't have for your organization, that you're willing to pay for. Hence why they're an employee, right? So why not make the best of it? So Jonathan, what are some of the best ways? If somebody out there listening said, man, I got to get him to talk to my boss in my office, how can they get a hold of you?
So please share my phone number, 312-636-6609. That is my direct cell phone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can do email, you can do LinkedIn, but give me a call. Be honest, texting, you'll get a faster response because I'm usually in a Hollywood Square with a couple spotlights on me. But a text, I'll respond to you within a day. I would love to have a conversation with you. And hey, even if it's just brainstorming ideas, kicking things around, if you want to think about how you can go have a conversation with your boss or colleague, let me know. In case you haven't picked up on it, I'm passionate about folks and individuals and therefore organizations getting to better places. So I would do this even if it was all for free.
Look at that. Well, folks, you heard it here. He gave out his personal phone number.
Yep.
So excellent.
Shout out to Mike Jones for setting the standard back in the day.
Look at that. That is awesome. Well, Jonathan, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Let me see if I can do this on time. Let me see. Look at that. Look at that. It worked. I got balloons coming out right when people clapping. Thank you, man. Have a good one. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Again, we are available on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Now on YouTube, you're able to download this video, but we are on Apple Podcasts, Google, Player FM, try to remember here, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and what's the other one with Amazon? Oh, Audible. So we are an iHeartRadio. I think I said that already. It's all right. So we are on all of those platforms. Go ahead, give us a like, and send us an email if you want to hear a specific topic, or if you have an idea for a guest. Shoot me an email at ebaez@baesco.com. That's ebaez@baesco.com. So, folks, that said, this is the end of the show. Thank you very much for listening. Again, really appreciate it. See you next time. Have a good one.